Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome to Help the Helpers. And we're going to have a very interesting session today in our series of how focusing can help us talk about the untalkaboutable, the unsayables. And, uh, and I'm so thrilled to have my good friend, Robert Axel, who I have known most of my life since graduate school, with us today. And we're going to talk about sex. What an interesting topic to talk about. In the series with religion, money, I think there are five things: religion, money, sex, politics, and death. Those five things. If you have any other things that you find difficult to talk about, let us know and we'll put them on the program. So it seems like the perfect setting in a certain way in New York to talk about something like sex because it's blizzard and cold, it's snowy, and everybody is in their house trying to be warm and cozy. So, sex seems like a very good topic for such a situation. So, I want to start by saying that I was born at I think the perfect time. I think. I always ask people, when they would want to be born. And I think I was born at the perfect time. That was this crossover between um, the sexuality of the 50s, and we all had to wear the same shoes, the same crinolines. They were these slips that you had to wear,
Oh,
and saddle shoes. And sex was like something that you whispered about in school in the back stairs to the sexual revolution when everybody was just experimenting and being wild, and um, there were loads of big workshops of women exploring their own sexuality, and it was a time of awakening and protest and exploration. And even though I came of age in that explosion about of sexuality, I've always found the subject of sex very mysterious. I mean, aside from all the stuff around it, especially, well, I was going to say especially for women, but it's not true. I think we're going to ask Robert. I think there's as much stuff around sexuality for men, but it's somewhat different stuff. Um, and then, of course, there's all of the stuff around non-binary uh, sexual identity and all the stuff that goes with that. And so it's a very, very complicated subject and such an intimate, close to the bone subject. So I think we've built up a way of talking to each other for almost 6 years in April, every Monday. So I think we're ready for this topic. So I want to introduce Robert, and Robert and I met doing workshops, but and Robert has worked in the field of therapy and sexuality for all these years. But my recent experience of Robert was a short film that he's starring in, that an amazing film. And if we find a way of sharing it with you, we will. But I had a wonderful time with the film and meeting the people involved in the film. And Robert is also a poet, so he's going to read his poem at the end. So that's all I'm going to say. Robert, it's all yours.
Well, welcome. It's an honor to be here today with and to share in your community experience of helpers across the globe. Wow. Lynn and I, as she said, met in the early 1970s in graduate school. We each showed up for a group counseling course, and both of us were leaders at heart, and we both kind of co-led this peer group of graduate students. And since then, and that was at NYU in the early 1970s, and we've been close friends and colleagues and admirers of our work and our art. Lynn is a wonderful painter, and art feeds me. So we formed the Center for Human Potential, which was on the Upper West Side at St. Stephen's Church in New York City, where we led experiential groups and humanistic groups and Gestalt groups. And one group that Lynn and I led together was something called He Said, She Said, a communication between the sexes about sex and sexuality and communicating. And I just remember in the early days, it's flashing on me now that we had a discussion about impotence and sexual functioning and how the women felt about it and how men felt about it. It was. I just remembering it right now. What?
I don't even remember that, Robert. That was pretty innovative.
It was. It was, and it was the first time I really heard. I mean, not the first time, but I mean, I was very young. Like the woman's point of view in that situation about how she felt that she didn't feel like adequate. She didn't feel good about herself, let alone the man's point of view of feeling shame and embarrassed and put this. So it was very groundbreaking for me as a young person to hear that and to share that experience with you, Lynn. So I've always been in awe of your work, Lynn, always embodying, Carl Rogers' reflection techniques. And I've learned so much about active listening through you from early time. And that was a cornerstone. And then as you embodied and explored and have taught Jean Genlin's focusing, that's extraordinary how you're sharing that with the world and literally with the world, and how you've also incorporated your own style of self-psychology and analytic work, and you've just been very open, and I admire who you are as a person. So again, I'm honored to be part of this difficult conversations, the Unsayable workshop series that have gone from religion to politics. Today, the topic is our comfort zone in talking about sex. Just take a moment and close your eyes or just focus in. And what does the concept of sex and sexuality immediately bring up in you? What is your felt experience in this moment? What part of your body feels anything right now? Breathe into that part and exhale. Again. Do your body's sensations put you on guard? Are they protective? Are you flowing in your energy? Do you feel shame, joy, suspicion, arousal. My goal is to help people to frankly and openly share their feelings by creating an atmosphere that reduces shame in talking about sex, which is an often taboo topic in many, many cultures. In my work, I talk about sex all the time. I'm called upon to nurture healthy sexuality and intimacy enhancement in the aftermath of a client's behavior that creates chaos, despair, trauma, disrupting their lives and or the lives of their partner. I explore intimacy blockers and our intimacy enhancers. How we may block our own intimacy with ourselves in our private moments, in our discussion with our friends in our family, and with our partners or prospective partners, how we ourselves put blocks there. They may be sexual blocks, they may be attitudinal blocks. Or how do we enhance this intimacy with ourselves, friends, family, and our partners? I collaborate with my client and their partners on the enhancement of sexual intimacies through psychotherapy and sex therapy techniques. I'm also there to discover how each person's unique sexuality and their sexual orientation and how to express the many facets. Actually, I really was afraid in anticipating today that my talking openly about what I do in my work would turn you off, block you, making you think that I am the sex police, making you feel uncomfortable. That's not what I want to do. But because there's a balance between what's healthy sexuality and this and what might be problematic or out of control. In my work, I look at, I get a skewed balance sometimes, but the goal is always to round it out and create that healthy sexuality. So let's create a safe space today. Or rather, look, you all have already created this safe space that you invited me into through your work as a community together. For our gathering of human beings from across the globe today, let's find a common ground on this often difficult topic. Again, in my work, I'm called upon to actually name, state, and explore the nitty-gritty details of a person's private life. I tell my clients that the work is in the details because that openness and sharing of themselves will reduce shame, and also it can be quite a healing release. But, now here's the but, can I talk to my partner about my innermost desires, the full range of my sexuality, my orientation? That's a good question, and I think I've been dealing with that over the 50 plus years that we've been together. Do you agree, or can you agree, that our ability to be open and frank in our discussions of sex and sexuality is dependent upon the person who you're talking with? I think so, yeah. How do we think about and talk to ourselves about what we like, what we want, and who we are? How do we talk to our family about sex? What would my mother say? How do we feel about talking talking about our sexual preferences and who we are with prospective partners? as helpers, how comfortable are we in discussing these issues in detail with our clients, students, patients? Today we are here to explore through focusing how we handle our own feelings in conversations. Let's imagine ourselves in the most comfortable situation with someone talking about our sexuality or orientation, our fears, our desires. Who is that person? Whom do we share our turn-ons? Or you may feel that it's not appropriate to talk about sex at all. I call upon you to listen to your internal voice. What do I want and need to talk about in terms of my sexuality, my orientation, my preferences, my fears, my fantasies? Who do I want to share this with? What do I want to say? And with whom are we most resistant to talk about sex and sexuality? How does that resistance manifest in your body? What is your felt experience around this resistance? And what is your felt experience when you do share? What does that experience like for you? Well, of course, today there are no right or wrong ways to participate, and so who is being forced to talk about anything, of course. And my open-ended questions perhaps have provoked and evoked some feelings and thoughts within you. They certainly have within me. So I'm happy to open the floor to hear everyone's feelings and thoughts, reactions, questions.
Thank you, Robert. I think we sort of had this open field here, and anything that comes to any of us is welcome. Absolutely anything. So I think I'll ring my bell. This is opening the conversation.
I'm going to open.
Yay!
Hello. Hi.
Hi, Susan.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. This is a big topic. I would love to hear about the 3 Ps: pornography, prostitution, and polygamy, because I get those with people, and I'm glad that they feel comfortable talking to me, and I treat them generically like I would treat anything else, with respect and hopefully kindness and curiosity, and then dealing with any reactions from either other parts of them or other parts of other people. But I think personally, I feel quite different about all 3 of those. And so, and I'm left with wondering whether I should be talking about them differently. So I ask here.
Could you just say another sentence there, Susan, that you're open with your clients about about the three P's, but you wonder if you should be open because personally you feel not open or you feel there was just another sentence that
Yeah, that's right. I feel like there's, there's things that then take them away from their partners or cause strain in relationships or cause strain with parts of themselves or it just those things may feel to me more problematical than positive.
mm,
So I hear, Susan, so that you're wondering, should I be more or could I be more direct in my follow through with them when they talk about these things because they could be problematic in their
Or
relationship?
should I be judging at all? Like I try not to, but I'm just wondering, like, should I be more like, hey, course your partner is upset because that thing does creates all this unsafety for that person, and what are you doing? Why are you going outside and doing all this other stuff? Like I
Exactly.
wish I'd be stronger in that, tougher. I don't know. I open up to the whole group how I wanna know how everybody deals with this.
Exactly.
I've had the privilege of observing Jan Winhall give hour-long focusing sessions for people who uh, are in the behaviors that Susan talked about. And each time there's such an evolution in the session. She has a way of following the person, supporting them. The whole it's like a big opera with all these different, or a circus with all these different acts going on. And then slowly the thread of meaning for the person who is afflicted and is offending, and uh, it becomes human and then starts the real work of supporting the change that is really wanted at heart. So I rarely speak in this group, but this question of Susan's really brought me to remember that there are ways, and it's a lot of work.
I'd just like to say that it doesn't feel different to me than any kind of uh, subject that a client brings that I feel uh, judgmental about or disapproving of. And we have a difficult job as therapists to sort of put aside the judgments and uh, the disapproval, and then to be able to open to what the person is wanting, struggling with. And it doesn't mean sort of making believe that everything is fine if destructive stuff is going on, but it means coming at that from this place of wanting to know what it's saying, wanting to know where it's going, what the person is needing or experiencing. I don't know.
I wanted to respond to that and to Susan also about it. Comes up a lot for me. And I agree that I tend to treat the content as any other content. But as a larger issue, when you were talking about how does it, Susan, addressing, how does it affect a partner? And sometimes I find myself being drawn into doing couples therapy when only one person of the couple is there. And I have to figure that out and generally stay with the person who's there and not kind of do some mediation with an absent partner.
Mm.
I'm wondering whether consideration of the wider view about humanity in general and individual in particular, whether looking at the whole spectrum informs our individual understanding of where we are coming from, like putting in the context of being part of humanity and the richness of humanity and our own individual tech. I think for me, that helps me to understand a lot of human endeavors when I look at it in the larger context, as well as my own particular intricacy.
Can you say more? Can you, how, like specifically, and
Oh,
what's the
well,
larger
I mean,
context
if
here?
you, from from what I know of the ancient Greeks, uh, there's quite a lot of sexual freedom in certain parts at certain times. And also in some society where polyamory is practiced, and also say in Pacific Islands where sexuality is treated more lightly without moral connotation, there is an easier time. So I'm saying that our individual life experiences from childhood to adulthood, when we put in the context of other cultures and other human cultures, we can better understand where our own culture sits and where our own individual history comes into play. And that gives a better, for me, a better take on how to situate myself. Does that help? I don't know whether I've explained it uh, properly, but I see Lynn smiling, so I take that to be a good sign.
And
Sounds like
Robert
you're saying there's
smiling.
a
I
spectrum,
get it. Yeah.
that there's a
Yeah.
spectrum. There's a spectrum of humanity that we should hold the whole spectrum.
And and
Yeah.
and 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 uh, and recently, my felt sense of humanity has increased a lot from learning about the history, not just of sexuality, about philosophy, about mystic tradition, about music, enlarging our connection to the rest of humanity creates a felt sense of feeling humanity, not just in the head, but a bodily felt experience of humanity. Because for me, I find the human species most fascinating, really fascinating species. And each one of us is a member of that species. It is a marvelous gift. And so for me, I am touched by the fact that we have the capacity for a very broad and deep understanding of where we are in our contemporary times, which is quite uniquely placed from other times.
Mm. I love that. There's a kind of freedom and openness that you bring, Lip. It's like we're all seeing from our very, very particular histories and where we're as the existentialists say, thrown, where we are on the planet and the time. And the species is such an interesting species, and sexuality is, what keeps this species going, right? Something about the cross-culturalness of the conversation feels very good to me.
Thank you. And Vera and Marvin, I'd like to take a turn. Maybe Vera and then Marvin.
Marvin was first.
Oh,
Thank you.
No. Thank you, Vera. Thank you. Anyway, thanks, Robert. First with those two words, sex and intimacy. But really brings on the table a relationship. And what I wanted to say is that in that relationship, there is an idea of curiosity. I feel like there's curiosity. And sometimes, from what has been shared, it might be is the animal side of us who is present to the curiosity. Is it the child who is present to the curiosity? Is it the adult? And I can refer to various experiences, whether in practice, intercourse, whatever it might be, or in handling someone through therapy or talk. But that idea of curiosity and which part of us is present to attend to that. Yeah.
I love that part that you said, the curiosity and the child and the innocence of child and curiosity and the development of the development of curiosity and exploration and sexuality, and then how that is, enhanced or thwarted or blocked, and regaining that sense of exploration and curiosity is really that's it. That along with the notion of the human species is very reassuring. It's actually liberating, to think about that.
Somehow I'm thinking of Eve Ensler. Does everybody know her?
Vagina monologues.
Yeah, the vagina monologues. There was something I remember when I saw that play that was so touching and deep and moving and liberating. If anybody has seen that or knows Eve Ensler, maybe you could say a word about it. But she taught women all over the world to be able to say the word vagina. And it's a word that people don't say, but also to talk about their own bodies, their own experiences from what we would call a focusing place.
Shall I go ahead?
Yes.
Thank you, Robert, for those questions. I really resonated with several of them. Among others, that it has a lot, how I talk about sex or don't talk about sex has a lot to do with who is with me. And I was lucky enough that in my 20s, I had a group of friends who were very explicit and open about talking about our sexuality. And I notice now that I'm in my 40s that there is very little talk, as if I don't know. It almost feels like, yeah, you're still saying it. It's a taboo, and I have resistance against that taboo. Also because I think it creates trouble for us. I discovered that the openness that I brought with me from my group of friends back then, I brought that to others, and they had discoveries of, for example, something as simple as the pain of having sex while having a what do you call it? A UTI? Is that yeah,
Yes.
in English, and just things that are actually pretty concrete and important to be allowed to speak about. Everyone does it, or am I wrong? Everyone has sex in some shape or form. And I also, through those discussions that I had, I also noticed that I liked how you brought in intimacy, because I've also discovered that it is very possible to have sex or intercourse without any intimacy whatsoever. And I've also experienced deep sexual intimacy without being naked with someone. And I do have one friend now with whom I sometimes speak about sex and sexuality, and right now I'm single, so I don't have a partner, but I don't know what I'm saying, but you asked us about our needs. What do I need to speak about? And I feel like I generally need to speak about sex more in everyday life, and intimacy. What is it? Intimacy, sexual intimacy, but intimacy that doesn't need to be sexual, how sexual intimacy doesn't have to lead to sex, the act of sex. I don't know. There's a lot of juicy and interesting topics there that has a lot to do with being a human being and being an alive human being. I think something like that, maybe.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. I think you also broadened out what we mean by sexuality. That sexuality isn't just, having sex. It's a whole way of our being.
Yeah, the way you talked about talking about sex during a UTI, or the idea of UTI, it encompasses everything. Your body parts, your human functioning, and communicating about this difficulty and the hints of sexuality, and just wanting to be free, to be able to look at it all, to look at the sex acts as not necessarily a human relational need for intimacy, but this is physiological, biological, and then the need for intimacy.
Eric is raising his hand.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vera. I've sort of been sitting on Robert's invitation about us, and we've been sort of gently circling bigger perspectives. And um, it's probably my nature, but I also had a teacher who was part of what's called a crazy wisdom tradition. So I like to jump off of cliffs and just like stir it up. Um, I'm trying to learn how to moderate that. Um, when we were talking, I was thinking about someone I'm working with right now whose presenting content is sexual, but it's so complex. There are so many layers. And my gut feeling isn't that that's our topic, that there's scaffolding to be done. There's heart and warmth and safety to be done. And when I trust that, he just blooms, but he's still troubled. He's hurt by his own habits. And so enough about, well, actually, a little more about that. I saw a video of Stephen Rolnick recently who was talking about, he's a motivational interviewing guy, and he was talking about how what really works, having descended from person-centered counseling, is this, it's like the mother's scaffolding of a child where she's both leading, and I've seen Lynn do this, both leading and following. There's a little bit of prompting, but it's not directing. And it's very intimate. It's profoundly intimate. That ability to be so in ourself that we can just sense the before and the after. And I think that kind of intimacy has a place in sexuality, and intimacy. And I just was really liking, Vera, your placement. The feeling I have, the traditions that I practice in are about whole body experiencing and experiencing the world in that. And it's kind of sexual. I mean, I'm very sensitive in my energetic fields, and sometimes I sense people's sexuality. I couldn't language it. I love that. You know, it doesn't have to go anywhere. It's just like we're animals, and our sexual being is so close to the root of our species. Like our species want to further themselves, and there's so many layers. And so Lynn suggested once to only throw in one ball at a time, and I can see that I'm getting excited. So
I love that ball that you threw in about the felt sense of someone's sexuality. And I'm sure that all of us have a felt sense of that dimension of any interaction, but we don't pay attention to it, or we don't talk about it, or we don't look for it.
And the reality, the notion of living with, experiencing our mutual sexualities and energies, just being comfortable with that.
there's another tiny piece I want to throw in following you, Robert, which is something that I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, It's called Comfortable in Your Own Skin. And it's a fruition of that understanding. And that's really important. Like, what is that? That's a big humanistic question, but it feels like it relates to some kind of thriving in our topic.
Hey, everybody, it's BJ. Just let me say thank you. Everyone who has commented has just sort of been like a little bomb exploding in my mind. Just to actually sit in a room full of people and hear you making observations about sexuality it's kind of astonishing. And back to the unsayable part, and I would love to say something to every one of you who has spoken, because it all of it touched me. And the only thing I want to contribute is a kind of a puzzlement that I have. I've heard several references that could be taken to mean something absolute, that every person walking around senses themselves as sexual, or who we all do it. Everyone. And so my question is, and it was the curiosity that, thank you for that word, that made me wonder. I've worked with several people who do not consider themselves to be sexual and are not mentally upset. They're not typically the client for me. They're typically the one who has found themselves in a marriage and who has discovered, all my life I've known, I just am not interested in that. And now I'm stuck. I have to do it. I don't want to do it. I'm just not interested. So are those people deluded? I'm curious. What do you guys think about it? Not what do you think, what do you feel? And I say there's a sensitivity for me. I'm like the very first Susan. My own life has been so ebulliently sexual since I was, 3, I think. And so I don't know what to make of that when I encounter it, but clearly for me, I believe them.
Yeah, my felt sense is I've worked with people who identify themselves as asexual, and they have organized their life accordingly. Some in partnership, some not, in different arrangements. And I include that on the continuum of sexuality.
Thank you, Nancy. So what I hear you saying, just to be sure, is to choose to sense oneself as not sexual is on the spectrum of sexuality for you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to, tear at words. I'm familiar with what you're talking about, of course, but I'm thinking of one person who just said, I'm offended at that. One client who said, I'm offended at that. Why do I have to be on a scale of sexuality? I'm not interested. I don't want to pole vault. I did a lot of athletic things, but I am not interested in pole vaulting. And that was not taken as something funny. It was just, it's just a curiosity.
I think Liz has her hand up for a little while. I don't know if others can see that, but maybe she wants to say something.
Yeah. So maybe Liz and then Mikhail. But why don't we pause for a moment, jumping from so many perspectives?
You can all pause while I talk. You don't have to listen to me. I was thinking this conversation gets so clean and universal, even when we're talking about sex. And I know we're not allowed to talk about Woody Allen anymore, but I'm going to talk about him anyway because he was in a movie which he wrote called Everything You Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask. And there's sort of a famous line where he plays a character of a famous sexologist and he's interviewed. And the interviewer asks him, Doctor so and so, is sex dirty? And the character answers, it is if you're doing it right. And, there's something about all these therapists and focusers, and, it's universal. And we get so high-minded when we talk about, we want everything to be clean and open. And, you can kill something in that too. And maybe we might not think this is a good thing, but I think in our culture and cultures, the cultures that I think all or most of us here belong to, there is an element of sexuality that is taboo, and that's part of what makes it exciting. And that cleaning things up, and especially making them sort of clinical, is not necessarily sexy.
Hi, Liz. Michael, I know you have your hand up, but I have
Yeah. You can go.
I've been known to jump in.
Could I be reflected since this is focusing and not just move on to the next?
Well, I don't know whether I was going to reflect you because I'm not a great mirror, Liz, but I did want to respond. I was responding to you in the sense of that dirt and sex to me is that it's shame. And shame is, a different subject altogether. I think that they're very closely linked. But, so it's that, So I don't know whether I've jumped in, but I did want to say something about the unspeakable. And it's sort of something around power and shame. And what I was wondering about the unspeakable was in our national and international conversations, it is about the Epstein files and all of that story, So and my unspeakable question is when do people become victims, and when do we stop becoming victims? So I'd say healthy is non-shaming, and when I can't ask for something that I want, is part of my own inhibitions because I can't say, well, I have inherited a lot of shame from being a woman, or vagina dialogues, monologues was lovely. So anyway, Robert, thanks so much for holding the space for this, but I'm just so, I suppose now that I've spoken, I'm just so upset about this subject. Intimacy and shame is all part of the same for me, and spirituality and sexuality and fun and flirting and all of that as well. That it's all right once it's safe, once I'm safe. So yeah, thanks, Michael, for indulging me, letting me go first.
Well, thanks to Liz also for introducing that level also, I think.
Yes.
I've been always mesmerized by the fact that sexuality seems to be at the core of everybody's interest, and everybody's thinking always about it. And it's intriguing because there's no teaching anywhere about it. No classes, no one teaches about it. And, the religion, politics, and sexuality, you never talk about that in school. That's what they always said in my physical, I was a phys ed teacher for 30 years. Never talk about that. The three things, religion, politics and sexuality. That will get you in trouble, you know. But it's interesting that sexuality is so important, but no one really teaches us anything. So where do we learn? You know, probably anywhere we can, and probably not necessarily in a very healthy way. For myself, I have a metaphor. Sexuality, the way it was taught to me, is a propaganda. You know, it's something that is imposed on society as if it's something we need to do the way it is told to do. And I'm coming out right now. I am non-sexual at all, not interested, because it's not sexuality that I'm not interested. It's genitals and using people's bodies to have fun as if they're objects of pleasures. I'm not interested in that. That's, for me, exploitation. You know, I'm more interested in what Pauline was talking about, that sexuality is something that brings us to a higher level of consciousness, awakens people to love, to interaction first, to a better quality of living. But around me, it's like, no one seems to know about this except in this group that we do talk about this subtlety about what living is all about. I don't have the final word on this. You know, I'm just trying to find my place. But at 71 years old, the functional genital body doesn't work really well. So maybe the body is telling me, do something else, man. You've done it all again for many times. Life, you know, the third age, the golden age, is something new to experience, like maybe letting the kundalini pass through you, you know, something like that, which is highly sexual. So I have another thing to say. I don't want to talk too much, but there's other people. But I said there was no teaching about it, but after my 2 bachelor's degree, I registered into a master's degree in sexology at university. And I was pretty disgusted by the high priestess and priestesses there talking about dysfunction, about diseases and frigidity and premature ejaculation. And I talked to them, what the hell are you talking about? That's not necessarily sexuality. Doctors talk about that, but what about sexology? What about that? And I said to them, licking an ice cream cone is extremely sexual. You know, skydiving is sexual. Riding a bike is sexual. It's not genital, but it's sexual. Why are you talking about love and joy and life and being active like pole vaulting or whatever else? And after the meeting with PhDs talking about dysfunction, a man from a news an editor came to me and said, Michael, have you ever think of writing a book about your thoughts? Because it's very original. You should write a book about it. But I never did. So I'll finish with this. Very happy to be here and talking about this incredible subject that seems to be very interesting for everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mikhail. I'm looking forward to reading your book when it comes out.
Looking forward to writing it. Thank you.
And, I think Jen has something to say.
Well, Eric was first, but I didn't speak yet, so I'm going to speak, even though Eric was first, because it's all about power. I'm taking the power. Pauline brought up power, and I think we can't talk about sex without power, because I think a lot of the problems, both with what Mikhail referred to as propaganda, and with Epstein, is about power. And it's the power to have sex when you want to have sex, and the power to deny sex when you don't want people to have sex. And I think that is what's not being said. And since we're talking about the unspeakable, I wanted to say it, although Pauline did say it. Okay, now that I've said it, I don't have to say anymore. Go ahead, Eric.
We always want to hear from you, dear.
I just thought that was so important. I'm just going to just totally interrupt and say that the power thing, and I think also to bring about, yeah, the ages and ages where men had a lot of power over this and abused it. I think that's something important to talk about. I'm Jewish. I'm reading the Book of Esther for Purim, and this king guy got to have a harem, and Piccoli wanted to be his queen and throw out the others.
Eric?
Yeah, I was just taking in Susan's comment about just the depth of disrespect of the feminine and not wanting to rush past that. Just the profound depth of that. What I'm pivoting around Liz's dirtiness and Vera's veering towards herself. And I think I do want to jump off a certain cliff that was implied by Robert and just say it's sort of in the spirit of the vagina monologues that for men, a prostate orgasm is a whole body event that maybe begins to approximate the glory that women get to have with your fabulous nervous systems. And in the spirit of exploration, I started anal masturbation and just discovered, whoa. Now, is any woman going to want to do that for me? Is that too dirty for her? But I want her to because it's spectacular. It's just fucking spectacular. And I grew up with Unitarian intellectuals with older sisters, and they sat around the dinner table when I'm like pretty young, talking about sex and their periods and stuff. And it was just anything was available at that dinner table. So I didn't get a lot of morality. And so I just want to, and also people talk about porn. So I thought, well, I'll go find out about porn. It's really sad because they're not feeling each other. That's the sad thing about porn. But it is stimulating to see penises going in and out of vaginas and penises and women's mouths and things. But it's sad. It is sad. So anyway, I think I've just turned a corner.
Yeah. Wow.
Robert implied.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, a word I haven't heard us say today, but please correct me if someone said it. When Jim spoke of power, it came to me a memory of violence. I don't think I've heard us speak directly about violence yet, and just throw it out because I remember, and I am ashamed to say this. I ever had one client that I couldn't go forward with, and it was a lesbian couple who were physically violent with each other. I worked for the Council for Battered Women in Atlanta, Georgia, so I know a lot about that violence in sex. But violence it's violent. It's more than sad when it's violent. This power over Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah. So that's what I've learned today is there are lots of ways to be violent. And that if I abhor them, then there's something for me to look at why I can't work with this population.
Thank you, BJ. I I think we've opened up so many different facets, but we've just kind of named them, right? Because we, sexuality is such a big subject, and maybe we'll do a part two on this subject because it really brings a lot. But I'm wondering if we want to go into breakout rooms, this is the moment. I think it might be a good idea because it's easier in a way to, and there's more room to talk. Yes, Robert, do you think we should go into breakout rooms?
Well, I really like I'm feeling very intimate with this group of all of this humanity in front of us. So I'm appreciative of the connection that we are having right now.
That we're all making, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
So I don't know. I'm a little reticent about that. I have separation issues, so this is.
I would also like to hear a bit more from Robert, from what you have heard, what your experience and learning on this subject that is close to your heart. What can you feed us back from what you have heard?
Oh,
Yeah, that's good. I mean, from hearing everyone who's shared, it's another dimension from the idea of, like what you said about humanity, and there are just all over the globe there are different, the idea of sexuality, and Eric's openness about his the speaking the unspeakable, unsayable, but making it quite sayable. And the idea, I can just reflect back what I've learned from everyone in different parts. So, yeah, we like, and the notion of it is, yeah. So like feeling the sexual energy, and it's okay. So is not wanting to be sexual, or is not wanting to define ourselves as sexual now at this time in my life, or that is sexual because I may not want to have genital sex, or so the question is, to be able to talk about it and to share about it, is this avoidance? You look at the models, is this avoidance of closeness because perhaps we were violated in some way, we were overstimulated as children in some way, we were deprived of sensuality and sexuality because we learned this taboo? Did we become avoidant of this, revolted by this, or just I'm at a stage where I don't need it or want it right now? Or I look at like our backgrounds, as sometimes as children we're either overstimulated by sexual images or experiences, or violated, or we're understimulated, or we're taught to keep everything very clean. And I love the notion of, like, it's dirty, getting into the dirtiness and the nitty gritty of it. So it's such a spectrum, and everyone is so different. And we grow up in about sexuality. Now, I think what's wonderful is the idea of fluidity, and that there's no necessarily, that people can talk about different aspects of sexuality. I mean, when Lynn and I were growing up, then we went in the 70s and we started talking about open relationships, and the difficulties and triumphs of that, and trying to make that work, or being able to communicate with one's partner about that or not. Or there's always, I'm just kind of free associating here. So, but I'd like to hear more. If you have any more specific questions. But the idea of, like, what's enhancing, what do we need? The idea of, like, am I retreating from something that I want because I can't have it because it makes me feel shame, and shame is there with everyone on some level.
Can I interrupt here a little bit.
Yes.
Can you speak to more, not so much about sex or sexuality, but about sexualness, about the essence rather than forms and practices? You mentioned at your beginning about enhancement. I wonder whether you can speak to the enhancement of being alive that is related to sexualness, not sex or sexual practices or forms, but the sexualness of human beings, which can be different from animal sexualness, not less or more, but different. So I want to see whether you can speak to us about the enhancing power of human sexualness.
Lip, you want Robert to give us all of us some help to being more alive sexually if we want to be. And of course,
Not quite sexually sex is an instinct, but human beings have a way of developing instinct beyond its normal standard, like our language instinct is carried very far. Our our uh, our thinking instinct. So I just wonder whether, from Robert's experience, because you speak about enhancement at the beginning, so I was looking to that. What is the enhancement that sexualness, not sexuality or thing,
yeah,
the essence?
that's a pretty big question, Robert.
Well, the
How do we
notion, I
get
think,
to this
was it Eric?
enhancing this essence?
Right? Was it Eric talking about the ice cream cone, or the sense of licking an ice cream cone, touching objects, closing your eyes and feeling, tuning into your sensuality, and touching, and actually going around and finding objects, or having a partner, give you things to touch, from a stone to sandpaper to a rug to the walls to a blade of grass, and start by touching and feeling that, and having that experience flood through your body, as well as enhancing, smell and taste, and your whole body, and tuning into what you like about touching yourself, or the notion of being comfortable with the humanity around you, and that everyone has feelings and emotions and body sensations. So enhancing that means the start of that is by and then the curiosity, the child, tuning into the child within you, within us, exploring, and then doing things as an adult that, whether it's creative or physical, or hearing those self-statements that might hold us back from being freer, like you're too old for that, or that's what girls do, or that's not appropriate for you. But kind of embracing the difficult things, and just owning the So what does that mean to you? What is that enhancing? What would enhancing one's sensuality, sexuality? Well, there's a line between, someone mentioned the difference between sensuality and sexuality, but there's.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert, for opening this, and also Lip. I don't know what your experience is in life and how many partners you've had. I've had more than 5,000 partners, because I was a dancer and teacher and trainer of contact improvisation. I put my face all over the place on bodies for 40 years or more, rolling on people, having people roll on me. And not a lot of people have those kinds of experiences, which expands the perception of what human bodies are, and interaction and the living within us, which is, you can want to play with the body, but there's someone inside, and they're experiencing something. And I remember something I was told when I was like 12 years old or 13 years old. And I was playing with my friends and they were saying, "Oh, hey, do you like that girl?" I said, "Oh, she's not that pretty or attractive or whatever for me, you know." And they said, "It doesn't matter. Put a bag over her head and jump her." I said, "What?" It's like the person is not important. What's important is my own physical genital pleasure. You know, we were talking about power before, and that really put me off. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but disliked it really a lot. It was like disrespectful and never thought of looking at it that way. So while doing contact improvisation, you know, I don't even remember touching a lot of people, women and men. I don't even know if I ever had even once an erection, ever. Because it wasn't about that. It was about, like Lip was saying a little bit, sensuality, experiencing the senses, touching the essence of what living is all about. And without knowing it, because I didn't have the language, and I'll finish with this, is interaction, connection, intimacy with someone, with the living aspect of ourselves, not the genital body, which, you know, it's something we all go through because we have the impulse of doing that, discovering who the others are and stuff like that. But I believe for myself, this is an adolescent interest. As an adult, I have to go beyond that, discover something else. But in society, contact improvisation is totally unknown. People don't know it exists.
Thank you. Thank you, Mikhail. That image of the contact improvisation is very evocative for this conversation. We have two hands up.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I was thinking before about the question about bringing sensuality, sexuality into your body, and I know, and the issue of shame. I love to go to the ocean and swim naked, and I love to go to a beautiful beach in Martha's Vineyard where somehow being in the water, it doesn't have to be in the ocean, you could be in a pool, where you can just really, like, your whole body opens up. It's like you're part of the world. You're part of, you're feeling the water. I know, I have that association. And it's interesting if I have shame about it in a crazy way in our society, even talking about it right now, like, oh, can I really talk about that? I go swimming naked and what are people going to think? And, um, um, if I tell some of my friends that, oh, we would go to a nude beach and, it was fine and nobody was looking, maybe there were some people, but it doesn't, you're not looked upon and, oh, look at, in a way that it's just in a critical way or in a judgmental way. You're just being alive with the sun and the ocean and all. So, but there's shame about it too. Like, can I talk about it? What are people going to think if I tell them that I go to this nude beach? And it's not part of our world. So, but yet it's part of who we are in a very primitive way, I think. So anyway.
I bet there's a lot of people here who would like to join you. Next time you go swim naked, let me know.
Okay. It's a great experience.
Yes.
Marvin?
The idea of power, or the experience of power, also brings the experience of vulnerability.
Yes.
Whether I would say yes or deny my wife, or she would. And it's a very, very tricky aspect of a relationship. And to some extent, it did also embodied the relationship in its all. That power game also existed outside of sexual intercourse. And I'm a bit old school. I've been married for 26 years. Had one partner, which is my wife, for 26 years. Have a few before, but for some reason, still believe that there's also an element of responsibility attached, because now we're talking about helping others. There's an element of responsibility, and the degree of comfort, the degree of ease of expressing about sexuality might not be common to all. I heard BJ saying violence at some point in time. Last month in the news, I heard that in France, they wanted to introduce sexual classes for kids at pre-primary school, 3 years above. I was thinking, what the hell is going on in this world? I mean, what we do in our personal life and what we do when we are in a position of responsibility, these are two different worlds, even though it's the same person. Two different worlds. And I would say that if at some point in time in my couple we had what we would say a kind of normal or sometimes what very delicate intercourse, which would maybe those what stay in my mind, but also to some extent sometimes the animal would be there, but when the animal is there, I'm not sure if it was both ways. I can't say. I can just say that it was like that at some point in time, but I don't know. I've said it already, so yeah.
Marvin, I want to jump in and say thank you so much for trying to say, because unlike you, I've been married 3 times. And so then it was a matter of accommodating and being responsible to 3 people, not at the same time. But that is a huge thing, because if one decides that marriage means I'm not going to have sex with anyone else, that for some of us, that's what it means. And for some of us not. But my heart is really there between your words, Marvin. Thank you.
And the vulnerability of that was so beautiful, Marvin, what you said about the vulnerability of having a partner and wanting sex and they don't want to have it with you, or not wanting sex and then you're hurting the other person's feelings. And it's so complex and delicate.
BJ, if you want to say more, I'm very interested in that.
What is it, Susan, that you want her to say more about?
And how she sounds like she had experiences or adventures, maybe.
Susan, thank you.
People, yeah. Go ahead.
I'll just say there's a spectrum that I live through on that level, is trying to be the most kind I can to my partner and to myself. And that I had all 3, at least 10 years each. And it was a constant thing, because it is so important. And because it does open up so much interaction, as some of you have indicated, it is so splendid. And so kindness. How long will I continue to see it as a kindness to my partner? And then when does it begin to feel so bad for the parts of me that I'm not able to be kind to me if I'm being kind to them? So there's as you said so beautifully, Lynn, there's no, the word for me is kindness.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anyone who wants to, feels like they want to share something or need to have their voice heard?
Yao should speak.
Yes.
Oh,
please.
thanks. Greetings, everybody.
Greetings, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, really appreciating raising Eve. Yeah, I worked with an organization and Eve embedded with us, just to find out a little bit more of the dynamics of victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault. And I remember early on, it was a focus group and invited clients that we were working with that wanted to chime in on it. And one of the Black women said, okay, yeah, the monologue thing is good, it's empowering, but I'm just going to use this word, pussy. Pussy monologue. And so that's a thing. Like the words we use also too. And it was interesting using dick and pussy. The focus group just kind of, let's talk about it. Let's engage this. All right. So that being said, thank you. So I wanted to get back to, thank you, women's health organizations, because when women started looking at their vaginas with speculums, it released and freed a whole lot of men as well. The last thing I wanted to put out is the sexualization and violence of Black bodies. And that's what I carry with me. It's like the Black male is supposed to be superly endowed. What? No. When I think about the gynecologist whose statue was thankfully snatched down a couple of years ago, but the Venus of Hottentot and how Black women's bodies were sexualized. So I had to go through a whole thing of how do I navigate this when I want to experience healthy sexual intimacy. Yeah. So that's some of the stuff that was kind of coming up with me as we were sharing this, and I thought it would just be something to share.
Thank you so much, Yao. And I'm glad that you brought in the sexuality touches every aspect of life, including race, including all kinds of everything. Yeah, so I'm very glad you brought that in. And the language is so important. I think one of the things that I've found as a therapist is that the language to talk about sexuality needs to be sort of freed up. And it's so particular. I mean, you can say pussy to one person and another person be horrified if you said pussy to them, but it is so particular. Robert, thank you so much. You really opened up this subject for us in a wonderful way, and we really appreciate it. And we have two poems to end with today, and I promise we'll come back to this subject because I know we're getting warmed up and we could go on, but it's time to stop. So why don't we have your poem, Robert, and Katerina has a poem, and thank you all so much. I love this conversation. Everybody, you just came in there with what's really present for you and alive for you.
Yeah, thank you all for just sharing with me. And yeah, well, going back to the notion of sensuality or childhood and exploration, my poem is sexual in a way that is playful but not overtly sexual. It's Press My Lids Together. It sort of incorporates being an adult, an aging adult, and the child within me. It's called Press My Lids Together. You have 10 more minutes to play. Ah, Ma, pleading. It's getting dark. Time to come in. Bouncing, bouncing, and pavement smacking. Time's up. Come in. Ah, just one more minute, please. I don't want to stop playing. Not then, not now. Then it was the youth of a bouncing ball. Chalk marks on the street demarcating our jumps for hopscotch. The thrill of hiding and seeking, especially at dusk. Now I won't press my lids together, lest the days slip away and the years and decades of a lifetime. Let me play, holding on, pocketing those daylight moments, resisting the moon and its shadows, dilly-dallying the night. Mama, I want to play. I want to write, to paint, to dance, to finish that collage, teach that course. Finally catching the agent's eye, the bingo of those elusive abs. Nah, don't want to close those eyes, to stop playing summer night forever.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Katerina?
My celibacy. Gentle wind embraces tree. Let it be freedom.
Beautiful.
Would you say it again, Katerina?
My celibacy. Gentle wind embraces tree. Let it be freedom.
Wow, thank you. Well, thank you all very much. And we do have a planning meeting at 10 o'clock this morning for those of you on the planning committee and anybody else who wants to join us. Bye-bye. And again, thank you so much, Robert. And maybe you'll come back and do a part 2.
Love to. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.